right, so let's go ahead and talk about the rookie quarterbacks in this year's draft class. So every single year, we have a new batch of rookie quarterbacks in the NFL, and everybody wants to debate and discuss who the best one's going to be. But in this video, I'm kind of taking that a step further, and I'm going to talk about who I think is going to make the most immediate impact in year one. This isn't necessarily my list on who the best quarterback is going to be for their entire careers, but this is just who I think is going to be the best in their first season. Now, the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to break up the quarterbacks into different tiers to talk about them. Tier 1 is going to be guys that I think are going to be week 1 starters, and because of that, are probably going to start the vast majority of the season. Tier 2 are going to be quarterbacks that probably won't start week 1, but I'm sure they will get some starts throughout the course of the year at some point. And then Tier 3 are guys that really aren't going to be starters unless there is an injury to the starting quarterback, in which case, then they would step in and probably start a good amount of games. But starting with Tier 1, the starters, we have 3 players that I'm going to talk about: Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, and Cj Stroud. Starting with numerical draft order, I'm going to talk about Bryce Young. So Bryce Young was the first overall pick in the NFL draft. Obviously, the Panthers traded that big package to the Chicago Bears so that they could have the rights to draft Bryce Young. Clearly, it was their guy from the beginning. And additionally, Bryce Young has already been named the starting quarterback for the Carolina Panthers. They are not doing what the Bears did with Andy Dalton and playing him for 4 or 5 games and then letting Justin Fields play. Bryce Young is going to start week 1, and he's going to be the Panthers quarterback for the whole season, unless he gets injured, obviously. And I think the fact that he's already been named the starter just goes to show how NFL ready he was out of college. I really did think this was a guy you really could start and plug and play week 1, and I think that's obviously what the Panthers are going to do now. Now, the Carolina Panthers, do they have a lot of weapons? No, they do not. But what they do have is a really good offensive line. I think with a quarterback like Bryce Young, that is more important than having great weapons. Now, obviously, some good receivers would help, but I think the fact that he's got guys like Ike Ekwonu up on the offensive line in front of him to protect him, I think is going to be really, really good for him. He's still going to be able to extend plays the way that he was doing at Alabama. He's going to be able to hit those deep shots like he was doing at Alabama. I think a lot of his game from Alabama is going to translate very well to the NFL level. Let's not forget, Bryce Young's best attribute is his pocket presence, his movement in the pocket, his, keeping himself out of danger, keeping the plays alive. Those are things that I think are going to be really, really good for him in the league. Now, it is fair to say that his size is a disadvantage, I will say. He is not going to be able to get crunched the way that he was at Alabama. There were a few times where he really got smacked pretty good, and if he does that with an NFL defensive tackle, he could be out for a few weeks. So I think injuries is a real concern. I think there are going to be instances where it's going to be hard for him to kind of see over the line, but I still really like Bryce Young. He's got a lot of attributes that I love about a starting quarterback, and I think that he's going to be pretty good for the Carolina Panthers this year, and I think he's going to start all 17 games. Next, let's talk about Cj Stroud, the second overall pick in the draft. A lot of similarities with Bryce Young. I don't think he's as good in the pocket, but he is a very accurate passer. He is going into a situation where the weapons really aren't great, but he does have a pretty good offensive line. I would argue the Texans probably have a top 5 offensive line, to be completely honest with you. I love their tackles. I think that he is going to be well protected, which I think the biggest thing that you could do for a rookie quarterback, I think offensive line over weapons. We saw certain quarterbacks, Justin Fields, right, had no offensive line with the Bears, his first couple of seasons, and he was just making mistakes and running all over because he had no other option, right? If you have a quality offensive line, NFL caliber receivers will get open eventually, right? That's kind of the way I think. So I'm glad that the first 2 guys I've been talking about have a pretty good offensive line around them. That way they're not getting hit too much. They're not getting, their rhythm thrown off, everything like that. And I also think if a rookie quarterback is getting hit all the time, it probably just breaks their confidence. Not that I think he was going to be some Hall of Famer, but David Carr got sacked like literally every single play when he was with the Texans. And you can't tell me that psychologically that didn't alter him a little bit. That didn't bruise his confidence and everything like that. This is the kind of guy who really probably isn't a big play extender, although he did do a little bit of that in the college football playoff game against Georgia. I think he's a guy that's going to sit in the pocket. He's going to throw darts. And when the Texans kind of build their team a little bit more and they get more talent around him, I think he's going to be putting up really, really good numbers in the passing game in years forward. But for this season, the weapons really aren't there. There's a lot of question marks, like could John Mechie be good? Could Tank Dell be good? Et cetera, et cetera. And then, as it is always, rookie quarterbacks struggle. They struggle from the adjustment to the NFL. I think similarly to, I keep bringing him up, similarly to Justin Fields, right? The receivers at Ohio State were just so damn good that it's going to be hard when you have a literal downgrade at wide receivers going to the next level, which is insane to think about. I think that just speaks to how good the Ohio State receivers have been in years past. But he's going to have to deal with a worse supporting cast. He's going to have to deal with more pass rush, etc., right? I think there'll be a little bit of an adjustment period for Cj Stroud. I think he might struggle in his rookie year, but I do think that he'll pick it up and be a solid NFL quarterback in a few years' time. All right, talking about the last guy in Tier 1, we have Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson, the 4th overall pick in the draft. I wanted Anthony Richardson to fall to 5 for the Seahawks. Unfortunately, he didn't, but that's because I think that Anthony Richardson is just like a freak athlete. I mean, he really is. The guy is faster, he's stronger, he's taller, he's bigger than pretty much any other quarterback in the draft, and most quarterbacks in any draft, right? So you combine this just raw athletic ability with this raw mechanics, and he's just raw. The way I heard Anthony Richardson described, and I want to repeat it, I believe it was by Joel Klatt. Anthony Richardson is like a raw steak, right? If you cook it and you season it and you do everything the right way, it's going to be the best thing ever. It's going to be amazing. But right now, it's raw. You have to cook it. You have to season it right. So there's work to be done. Out of the gate, Anthony Richardson is going to struggle mightily. He has the attributes. He's got arm strength. He's got, the speed. He's going to struggle because his accuracy and his mechanics right now are not great. Throughout the course of the year, throughout the course of a couple years, he'll definitely get better at that, and I do really like the fact that Shane Steichen is his coach to help him get through that. But as of right now, he's not there, and he's going to struggle week 1. The Colts, their offensive line struggled a lot last year. I think their receivers are pretty decent. I do like Michael Pittman. I do like Alec Pierce. Hopefully Jim Irsay stops being a dumbass, and they can keep Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. I think that would help him a lot. So Anthony Richardson mechanically is going to struggle. He's going to struggle with his accuracy. He's probably going to throw a lot of interceptions, I would guess. But the one thing that Anthony Richardson has over Bryce Young and Cj Stroud is that he can create plays with his legs. Not that saying that Cj Stroud and Bryce Young can't. Anthony Richardson does that to 11, right? If Bryce Young runs for a first down, Anthony Richardson might take that for 30, 35 yards, right? Anthony Richardson will make plays with his legs. And we kind of saw this a few years ago with rookie season Lamar Jackson, where passing-wise, he wasn't there yet. Mechanics-wise, he wasn't there yet. But he was still able to run a semi-efficient offense, basically just out of read option, out of QB power, out of counter, out of all of that stuff, right? Because nobody on the defensive side of the field was athletic enough to tackle, catch up, to get to Lamar, right? That's going to be a similar story to Anthony Richardson, where year 1, they're going to rely on his legs. And honestly, if at some point in the season he gets benched for poor performance, he'll still get playing time. They'll still bring him in on 3rd and 2, 4th and goal, whatever, right, to have him run it in. Anthony Richardson is going to struggle mechanically, and he's not going to be great year 1, in my opinion. But out of everybody in the draft, I think he has the highest ceiling. Now let's get into some Tier 2 guys that I don't think will be starters in week 1, but I do think will start at some point during the season. And in my personal opinion, the two people that come to mind are Will Levis and Stetson Bennett. Will Levis was, supposed to be taken with the top 5 pick, we were all hearing. And then he fell all the way to the early 2nd round where the Titans nabbed him. Now, the Titans right now, they kind of have a question mark, I guess you could say, at quarterback. Ryan Tannehill, is he still a starter? Did Malik Willis impress enough in camp to get some starts? Obviously, I think Will Levis is going to get some starts. But I don't know if he'll be the starter week 1. And Will Levis, to me, I just don't see it. You know what I'm saying? I just don't see it with Will Levis. I'm not a big Will Levis guy. I understand he's got a big arm. I understand that raises his ceiling a decent amount, but to me, he's just a little too raw for my liking. Like, I described Anthony Richardson as the steak. Will Levis to me is the cow, right? And if we're going to use the steak metaphor again, Anthony Richardson has a chef preparing him with Shane Steichen, whereas Will Levis, I don't know if I love their offensive coordinator. Mike Vrabel's a defensive guy. I don't know if I love their offensive coordinator, right? I just don't know. And then the other guy would be Stetson Bennett. Been hearing good things about him in camp. And the reason I have him in there is because I do think Matthew Stafford is getting older and he's getting a little more injury prone. I do imagine that he misses some games. Stetson Bennett could fill in, even maybe at the end of the year if the Rams have another disappointing season and the last few games they're just trying to see what they have in Stetson Bennett. I could see him starting a few games. I've been hearing good things about him in camp. The Rams reportedly love him, so that's good. But Stetson Bennett, Will Levis, I could see as two guys that could start some games next season. And then ending off the list, I'm going to kind of go quick here with a few guys that could see some playing time but would be an injury away. I will not be talking about every single rookie quarterback. Some of these guys I don't think will see the field at all in year one, and that's totally fine. But some guys that could see the field for an injury would be Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Jake Haener, Hendon Hooker, Aiden O'Connell, Clayton Tune, and Jaron Hall. Let me just breeze through this really quick. DTR is not seeing the field unless Deshaun Watson gets hurt. They're paying him $230 million. He's going to be the starting quarterback no matter what. I don't care how bad he is, right? But if Deshaun Watson goes down, I think he could step up and he could play pretty good. I don't think Kellen Mond is going to win the backup quarterback job, let's just say. Jake Haener, kind of similar situation, right? They just paid Derek Carr to be the starting quarterback. Jake Haener is not going to step in. He's not going to be the starter unless Derek Carr gets injured. Hendon Hooker, again, Jared Goff is the guy. Hendon Hooker himself is coming off an injury, torn ACL, so I don't even think he'll be eligible to play for a good portion of the season. But if so, right? Aiden O'Connell, the Raiders just paid Jimmy Garoppolo. Clayton Tune. Now, Clayton Tune's an interesting one because kind of already is a situation like that. Kyler Murray is still recovering from his torn ACL. And is Colt McCoy the starter? I don't know. Clayton Tune could be in the week 1 starter category, right? Obviously, it's because of injuries. Kyler Murray's the guy when he comes back. And then Jaron Hall for the Vikings. He is going to be behind Kirk Cousins as long as Kirk Cousins is wearing a Vikings uniform. So after reviewing all of the quarterbacks that are probably going to see the field this year, I have one answer on who I think the most impactful player in year 1 is going to be, and that's Bryce Young. Bryce Young, to me, is not only the first overall pick, not only has a really good offensive line, but I think he's the most NFL ready out of every single quarterback on this list. He's going to get the most playing time. Again, assuming he doesn't get hurt, he's going to play 17 games as a starting quarterback this season. I really like Frank Reich as his head coach. He's done good work with other quarterbacks in the past, and I just think Bryce Young is going to be the best in year 1. Now we're talking about ceiling, and in terms of the career, that's a different thing. But year 1, I expect Bryce Young to have the most immediate impact. Let me know what your answer was in the comments down below. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you are new, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out.